Which is the truth, the Quran and the Hadith, or the Bible? I have a foolproof method to get to the answer as long as certain criteria are met. What is this foolproof method that will settle this argument forever? Stay tuned for the answer. This foolproof method is really quite simple. It is to compare future prophecies and see which set of prophecies come true. And the best prophecies to use are the ones that relate to the end times. Past prophecies can be glossed over as being made after the event, but this cannot be done with future prophecies. Now, I can immediately see a fly in the ointment to my brilliant plan. You have to be alive when the end time occurs. And people have been waiting hundreds of years, well 2,000 years in the case of Christians, for this to occur. But hear me out on this. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it isn't going to happen ever. When a pregnant woman has done her 40 weeks and still not delivered, we don't say that it means it will never happen, though a lot of poor mothers may feel that way. No, we know that it makes it even more imminent. Today, a lot of people feel that we are getting towards the end as they look at the world and see the state it is in. Now, I appreciate that imminent in this context could be 30 or 40 years or more away. In that time, I will have kicked the bucket for sure, but some of you watching this may have a long way to go, God willing, inshallah. But who knows, it could all start today. So in the latter scenario, the foolproof method does have some virtue. Now, before we go any further, I want to add that I feel it is very important to watch this video's conclusion at the end. I feel that the conclusion that this leads to has a very important message that everyone needs to reflect on, not just Muslims and Christians, but everyone in the world. So, on with the video. It is important to say that for this test to be valid, that the prophecies have to have a nature where their likelihood of them occurring is statistically low, if not impossible. Both Christianity and Islam and a lot of other faiths believe that in the end times there will be an increase in wickedness and ungodliness. While this may be a sign, it is not strong evidence for the fulfillment of prophecy. The reason for that, apart from there only being three possible outcomes, it gets worse, it gets better, it stays the same, is that such claims are open to debate. What one man thinks is bad, another may think is good. Just look at the debates on issues that take place today. Proper prophecies would be claims that cannot happen by chance. And if there's some of the supernatural in there as well, then that is all to the good. Let's take a look at the prophecies for the end times that we find in the Bible, the Quran and the Hadith. I'm just going to stick with the main bullet points of the doctrines of Islam and Christianity because with some of the finer details of the end time prophecies, we find that different opinions can occur. So here are the main points of end time doctrines of each religion. So let's start with Islam's end times. They have a final day when everyone will be judged. We have the Antichrist, or to be more correct in the Islamic context, the Dajjal. The Dajjal will be an evil person who it seems his purpose will be to try to get Muslims, that's the believers, to leave Islam. He will try to deceive the believers with miraculous deeds and by giving gifts. It is said that he is blind in his right eye. He will eventually be destroyed by a big battle by either the Mahdi or Isa, depending on who you ask. The Mahdi, which is translated as the guided one, who while working with Isa will destroy all evil and restore the proper worship of Allah and bring about proper Islamic values. Apparently, he will make the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem his home. The Gog and Magog are two evil and vicious tribes that will escape from behind a wall that keeps them in their land and attack and ravage the whole earth and attempt to kill every true believer. They will be destroyed after Allah sends worms and insects against them after the Mahdi has prayed to Allah. Isa, remember that is Jesus, who according to Islamic tradition did not die on the cross but was taken up to heaven, will return to work with the Mahdi to destroy all evil. It is said that he will break all the crosses and kill all the pigs. He will rule for 40 years and then die. When we arrive at the final day, everyone who is alive will die. The believers will die peacefully, but the evil will suffer as they die with suffering according to how evil they have been. Then everyone will be resurrected to be judged by Allah. Those who have been believers before death and who Allah chooses to forgive their sins will go to heaven, that is Jannah, and the rest will go to hell, that is Jahannam. There are other signs and events that most Muslims agree on, but these are the most important details. So to the end-time beliefs of Christianity. There too is a final day judgment, but the difference from Islam is that that day does not occur when Jesus returns to the earth, but at least 1,000 years in the future. More on that later. The Antichrist comes. Now there's a lot of information in the Bible about the Antichrist, or as he is known, the beast, but we will stick to the main points. Satan will give him his authority and power to him, and he will rule the whole earth. He will bring a false peace over the earth, and he will make a treaty with the Jews and rebuild their temple for them, which is the third temple. The Jews at this time will see the Antichrist as the promised Messiah who has come to give them peace and security in their homeland. Then after 3.5 years, the Antichrist will enter into the temple, into the Holy of Holies, and sit on the throne and declare himself to be God. He will then force, or at least try to force, the whole earth to worship him. This is where the sign of the beast comes in that you may have heard of, which is that everyone has to have a mark on their forehead or hand. This is a sign of worship of the beast. Those who refuse will not be able to buy or sell, and they will risk being killed. It is at this point that the Jews will realise they've been deceived, and that this is probably the point that the prophecy in Zechariah is fulfilled. And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for the firstborn son. That is to say that the Jews will recognise Jesus as their promised Messiah. All this will be taking place during a 7-year period of judgment which is known as the Great Tribulation. At the end of this period, Jesus will return in glory. The whole world, with the exception of those who have turned to Jesus, will be gathered together to go to war with Jesus, but they will be easily defeated. And the Antichrist, along with the false prophet, will be thrown alive into the lake of fire. At this stage, those who have died as a believer will be resurrected, and along with them any believers who are still alive, then they will rule with Christ for the 1,000-year period. This, for obvious reasons, is known as the Millennium Period, and will be a time of peace and justice as Satan and his demons are thrown into prison and bound up for 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, Satan and the demons will be released, and they will deceive a large number for the last time for the last battle. After this battle and Satan's defeat, he will be thrown into the lake of fire, and the final judgment of the world will take place. Then following this, a new heaven and a new earth will be made, and this kingdom will go on forever and ever. Hopefully I haven't overloaded you with too much information. So now, what is the conclusion after all this? Well, as I said at the start, if either chain of events starts to take place in our lifetimes, then we can know that this revelation is from God. We can say that beyond any shadow of doubt that both the Islamic and the Christianity narratives are beyond the realm of normal possibility, which puts it in the realm of the miraculous. Or to put it another way, witnessing these events should be the final evidence that people often claim that they want to see to cause them to believe. I say claim that they want to see because I think we all realise that often it's just an excuse to avoid facing the existence of a God that we all must answer to. A final warning from the Christian position, though I am sure that Islam will have its own version of this warning. It may seem an impossible situation to see all these events take place in the Christian narrative and yet still not see Jesus as Lord. There's a verse about this in 2 Thessalonians 2 that says this: "They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so they will believe the lie, so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth, but have delighted in wickedness." It is always possible to deny the evidence if you really want to, and this verse is saying that God will help you do just that if you insist on rejecting his truth. So remember this when these listed events starts to happen. This is a very important issue, not just to Christians and Muslims, but everybody on the earth. If you are still alive when the Antichrist comes, you will have two choices. Either worship the beast and receive the mark and therefore avoid persecution from the beast and his followers, but receive eternal, and by eternal I mean forever and ever, condemnation from God Almighty. Or accept Jesus, suffer persecution, maybe even death, but spend eternity in heaven with God. Choose wisely. One very last point. We all know how frail the human frame is, and we can all kick the bucket at any moment. It says this in the Bible: "It is appointed unto man to die once, and after that the judgment." So don't make the mistake of waiting around for these events to take place before making your decision. Now is the time. So on that important note, I say thank you for listening, and I pray that God will help you to make the right decisions, and that before it is too late and a hardening of the heart takes place.